It's strange how people are always waiting, waiting for the right moment, waiting for permission, waiting for some invisible sign that it's okay to begin. But the truth is there is no perfect moment. The future doesn't arrive gift-wrapped. It's something you build, not something you receive. I wasn't born knowing what I wanted to do. Most people aren't. Life doesn't come with a map, and if you're lucky, you start to notice that the dots only connect looking backward. So if you're sitting there wondering what's next, wondering if you're ready, understand this. Nobody is ever completely ready. The ones who move forward are the ones who step into the unknown anyway. The future doesn't start before you're ready. That statement holds more truth than most people are comfortable admitting. Because deep down, we all have this idea that we need to be fully prepared before we take the leap. We convince ourselves that the timing has to be right, the conditions have to be perfect, and every skill must be mastered before we begin. But what if that moment never comes? What if waiting for readiness is just fear in disguise, holding us back from what we're meant to do? Readiness is a myth. Growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. It happens when we're stretched, challenged, and thrown into situations that force us to rise. When you look at the people who have done something meaningful, you'll rarely find someone who started with everything figured out. Most of them jumped in before they felt ready. They said yes before they had a plan. They took risks not because they were fearless, but because the idea of staying still was more terrifying than the unknown. The moment you stop waiting to be ready is the moment you start becoming who you're capable of being. Starting before you're ready doesn't mean being careless. It means being bold. It means trusting that you'll figure it out on the way down. It means being willing to fail publicly, learn quickly, and keep moving anyway. If you wait for permission, you'll be waiting your whole life. If you wait for the stars to align, the opportunity may pass. Starting before you're ready is about momentum. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. But once you start, once you take that first imperfect step, something shifts. You begin to build confidence not through preparation, but through doing. Action breeds clarity. Experience becomes your greatest teacher, and suddenly, things that once felt out of reach become part of your daily rhythm. The world doesn't reward people who wait. It rewards the ones who move. Even when it's messy, even when it's uncertain, especially when it's uncertain, because that's when you show you're serious. That's when you separate yourself from the ones who only dream. Everyone has ideas. Everyone has goals, but very few have the courage to act on them when they feel unprepared. That courage, that willingness to move with uncertainty, is what creates momentum, and momentum creates progress. Progress creates belief, and belief creates results. You don't become ready by standing still. You become ready by doing the work, by showing up when it's hard, by making mistakes and learning fast. The person who begins now will always be ahead of the one still waiting for the green light. If you start before you're ready, you gain time, you gain experience, you gain real-world understanding that no book, course, or plan can fully prepare you for. The sooner you begin, the sooner you evolve. And the faster you evolve, the sooner you become someone who doesn't need everything to be perfect in order to act. There's a kind of magic in motion. Once you start, doors open, connections happen. Opportunities appear that you could never have predicted while sitting on the sidelines. But none of that can happen until you take the first step. Starting before you're ready teaches you to rely on your instincts, to build resilience, to trust that your future is something you can create, not something you have to wait for. You don't find passion, you build it through action. This is something people often misunderstand. They imagine passion as something magical that suddenly appears one day, fully formed and waiting to be discovered like buried treasure. They spend years searching, thinking that if they just look hard enough or wait long enough, it will reveal itself. But passion isn't a moment of sudden clarity, it's a process. It's not found in a book, a course, or a YouTube video. It's built piece by piece through showing up, doing the work, trying, failing, learning, and repeating that cycle over and over again. In the beginning, there's usually uncertainty. You're not sure if it's the right path. You don't know if you're good at it, and often, you feel like you're just going through the motions. But that's exactly where passion begins, not in certainty, but in curiosity. It starts as a whisper, a nudge, a sense that something might be worth exploring, and when you act on it, even in small ways, it begins to grow. You don't wait for clarity before you take action. You gain clarity by taking action. Every small step forward brings a bit more understanding, a bit more excitement, and a bit more connection to what could eventually become a deep passion. People assume that passion is supposed to feel like fireworks, loud, dramatic, life-altering. But often, it's quiet at first. It hides behind consistency. It's disguised as interest, effort, repetition. The people who look like they were born to do something didn't find their passion in a single moment. They built it through years of effort. They didn't always love the process, but they respected it. They didn't always feel inspired, but they kept showing up. And somewhere along the way, they crossed a line from doing something because they had to doing it because they couldn't imagine not doing it. Passion is earned. It comes from mastery, and mastery comes from repetition. The more you engage with something, the better you get at it. The better you get at it, the more value you start to create. And the more value you create, the more meaningful it begins to feel. That's when passion starts to burn, not because you stumbled across it by accident, but because you invested time, energy, and heart into building something real. The joy isn't just in the outcome, it's in the process of becoming deeply good at something that matters to you. Waiting to feel passionate before you begin is one of the greatest traps. It keeps people stuck, hesitant, always looking, never doing. Action is the cure for uncertainty. Action is the engine that powers discovery. Even if you start down the wrong path, the movement itself will teach you what feels right and what doesn't. You can adjust course, but only if you're in motion. Sitting still won't bring answers, action will. You also have to be willing to be terrible at something before you get good at it. That's where most people quit at the beginning, when it's awkward and uncomfortable and full of doubt. But those who keep going push past that barrier. They give themselves permission to be bad, knowing that progress lives on the other side of discomfort. As you push through, something interesting happens. You begin to enjoy the grind. You start to find flow. You discover pride in the struggle. Passion isn't just joy, it's meaning, challenge, ownership. And that only comes from effort. That only comes from doing. Success is a byproduct of consistent risk and obsession. It doesn't arrive neatly packaged after a few attempts or light effort. It's not something that shows up because you were simply talented or lucky. Success is the result of showing up when it's inconvenient, of leaning in when others back out, of taking risks even when there's no safety net beneath you. Consistency and risk are not just ingredients of success, they are the foundation. Without them, effort fades, ideas die in notebooks, and dreams remain stuck in the realm of someday. The people who make things happen are the ones who are willing to bet on themselves over and over again, even when the odds don't look promising. Risk doesn't always mean big, dramatic moves. Sometimes it's the risk of being seen, the risk of putting your work out into the world before it feels finished, the risk of hearing criticism, the risk of starting from scratch. These are the everyday choices that shape someone's path. Most people want guarantees before they begin, but the ones who actually succeed understand that certainty doesn't exist. They don't need perfect conditions. They build momentum out of imperfect action and trust their ability to adapt along the way. Risk is not a one-time decision, it's a daily habit. It's built into the way they operate. Then comes obsession. Not in the unhealthy sense, but in the form of relentless dedication. The kind of focus that makes you think about your vision even when you're not working on it. The kind of energy that wakes you up early and keeps you up late. Obsession is what fuels the grind when results aren't showing. It's what keeps you learning, improving, refining, and repeating. It separates dabblers from masters. It's not about being the most talented, it's about being the most committed. The truth is, talent without obsession rarely survives, but obsession, even with limited talent, becomes powerful over time. People often want balance, safety, predictability, But those aren't the qualities that produce something legendary. Legendary work is born from obsession, from diving deep into a craft, from constantly asking, how can this be better? From making sacrifices that others won't make. It's not glamorous. It's not always fun. But that level of commitment rewires how you think, how you act, and what you believe is possible. It sharpens your instincts. It strengthens your resilience. And slowly, it starts to compound in ways no shortcut ever could. Consistency is what anchors obsession. It's easy to be fired up for a week or a month. But true progress happens when you stay in it, day after day, even when the spark fades. The people who win are not always the ones with the most energy. They're the ones who keep showing up when it's hard, when it's boring, when it feels like no one's watching. They don't wait for motivation to strike. They rely on discipline. They build systems around their obsession, so it's not left to chance. That daily rhythm, that willingness to repeat the fundamentals again and again, is where mastery takes root. The combination of risk and obsession creates pressure, but it's in that pressure that diamonds are formed. You learn more about yourself in moments of uncertainty than you ever will in times of comfort. Every bold move tests your commitment. Every failure tests your endurance. But with each test, you either grow or retreat. Success begins to reveal itself not as a sudden moment of triumph, but as the cumulative result of thousands of invisible choices to keep going, to take the leap, to stay focused when distractions call your name. Failure is not the opposite of progress, it's part of the process. It's the uncomfortable, often painful, but absolutely essential ingredient in anything worth building. Most people are conditioned to avoid failure at all costs. They associate it with shame, with inadequacy, with finality. But the truth is, failure is one of the most honest teachers you'll ever have. It doesn't sugarcoat, it doesn't flatter, it doesn't lie. It shows you exactly where your limits are and invites you to push past them. Without failure, there's no learning. Without learning, there's no growth. And without growth, there's no progress. When you're doing something that matters, something that stretches you, failure is inevitable. The more ambitious the vision, the more likely you are to stumble along the way. The road to anything meaningful is not a straight line. It's filled with detours, dead ends, wrong turns, and restarts. Every time you fail, you're forced to confront what doesn't work. You're forced to adapt, to innovate, to refine. That process, though painful, sharpens your thinking. It builds resilience. It humbles you. It reminds you that progress isn't built on perfection, it's built on persistence. Some of the most important breakthroughs are born out of failure, because failure forces you to look deeper, to question assumptions, to try again, not blindly, but with new insight. It strips away ego, it exposes what's real, and if you're willing to face it, to learn from it, to grow through it, failure becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. The people who achieve something extraordinary are rarely the ones who never fail. They're the ones who keep going after they do. They treat failure not as a sign to quit, but as feedback, as data, as fuel. Failure teaches you what success cannot. It teaches you about grit, about patience, about emotional toughness. It teaches you how to hold on to your vision when the world tells you it's not working. It forces you to get clear about why you started and how much you're willing to endure for what you believe in. Every setback becomes a test of your character. Do you fold under pressure, or do you rise and recommit? Do you let the failure define you, or do you use it to redefine what comes next? There's a reason why failure separates dreamers from doers. Dreamers talk about what could be, but doers are in the arena, bruised, scraped, and still swinging. The arena is messy. It's uncertain, but it's also where all the magic happens. You can't skip the failures and still expect the wins. They come as a package deal. You have to be willing to fall flat, to be embarrassed, to be misunderstood. That's the cost of progress. That's the price of doing something that hasn't been done before, at least not by you. What most people don't realize is that failure doesn't last unless you let it. It's not permanent. It's not a label, it's an event, a moment, and like any moment, it can be used, repurposed, and turned into something stronger. The ones who rise are the ones who reframe the narrative. They don't see failure as defeat. They see it as part of the climb, as proof that they're in motion, that they're testing limits, that they're not sitting on the sidelines waiting for perfect conditions. No one builds something great without getting it wrong often. The prototype breaks, the pitch flops, the idea doesn't land, the effort falls short, and yet, those moments contain the seeds of the next version, the better version, the version shaped by experience, sharpened by setbacks, and strengthened by the decision to continue anyway. Don't seek permission, pick yourself and begin. Too often, people wait for someone to choose them, to validate them, to tell them they're qualified enough or worthy enough to start. They wait for a boss to promote them, a mentor to notice them, a crowd to applaud them, or the world to give them a green light. But the truth is, the most powerful thing you can do is stop waiting and choose yourself. Pick yourself when no one is watching. Pick yourself when no one believes. Pick yourself not because you're certain, but because you're committed to creating something real. The world is filled with gatekeepers, but it's also filled with open roads. You don't need anyone's approval to start building. You don't need to be discovered, anointed, or selected to make a difference. The barrier to entry is no longer permission, it's courage. The internet leveled the playing field. The tools are in your hands. The audience is out there. The platforms exist. The only thing missing is your willingness to raise your hand and say, I'm going to begin not because someone told me to, but because I've decided it matters. Picking yourself means trusting your voice before it's popular. It means showing up before the invitation arrives. It means taking initiative instead of waiting for instructions. People spend years holding back because they think someone else has to open the door. But the people who make something happen don't knock, they build their own entrance. They don't look for permission, they look for possibilities. They don't ask, am I good enough? They say, I'll figure it out as I go. That mindset shifts everything. It takes you from a place of powerlessness to a place of ownership. The difference between people who dream and people who do is not talent, it's permission. Not from others, but from themselves. Giving yourself permission to be seen. To take risks, to be misunderstood, to try things before you're ready. Most of what's holding people back is internal. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of looking like a beginner. But once you stop seeking permission, those fears lose their grip. You begin to move faster. You make decisions. You take responsibility for your own growth in every industry. The people who rise are the ones who create momentum without being told. They publish when no one's reading. They film when no one's watching. They practice when no one's asking. And they do it not for applause, but because they believe in the process. They believe in the long game. They understand that waiting for permission is just another form of resistance. So instead, they act, they create, they put themselves in motion. Choosing yourself also means embracing discomfort. It means being okay with looking foolish for a while. It means understanding that everyone who ever did something remarkable started with nothing more than an idea, a decision, and the guts to move forward. There's no committee that's going to come around and tap you on the shoulder and say, now's your time. You decide when it's your time. You decide when to begin, and the more often you pick yourself, the stronger you become. Each time your confidence grows, your skill grows, your belief in what's possible expands. When you stop waiting, you start building. You take back your power. You stop asking for a seat at the table and start creating your own. You realize that no one else has your exact voice, your exact lens, your exact story. And that means what you have to offer is already unique. The only thing left to do is begin, not tomorrow, not after more preparation, not once everything's perfect, but now as you are with what you have. Wherever you stand, your future is built in the quiet hours no one sees. It's not crafted in the spotlight, not shaped by applause, not made during the moments that get posted, shared, or celebrated. It's built behind the scenes, when no one's watching, when the world is asleep, and when the only voice pushing you forward is your own. The quiet hours are where the real work happens. They're where focus lives, where doubt and drive go head to head, where you decide whether to coast or commit. Most people underestimate the power of these hours, thinking success is created by sudden breakthroughs, but it's really shaped in silence, in solitude, in sustained effort over time. The quiet hours aren't glamorous. They're not filled with motivation or magic. They're often repetitive, uncomfortable, and invisible, but that's what makes them powerful. They're uninterrupted by distraction, free from outside noise. They offer space to think clearly, to create intentionally, to practice relentlessly. In those moments, the work you do might feel small, but it accumulates. One line written, one idea tested, one skill improved. Over days, weeks, months, it compounds into something bigger, something meaningful, something strong enough to stand when it's finally seen by the world. The people who build something great don't just work hard when it's convenient. They make use of the moments others waste. They don't need an audience to show up. They don't need validation to keep going. They work with purpose when no one's cheering, because they understand that greatness is forged in the hours that don't get recognition. The early mornings, the late nights, the weekends sacrificed, the holidays skipped, the hours where discipline steps in because motivation is gone. In those quiet hours, there's a different kind of clarity. You see what matters without the clutter. You notice the gaps in your work, the cracks in your thinking, the areas that need more effort. You sharpen your instincts, refine your craft, and build a foundation strong enough to support the weight of your ambition. The spotlight later shines only because you earned it in the shadows. The confidence you carry comes not from public praise, but from private repetition, knowing you've done the reps when no one else did. Knowing you've already met the challenge before it ever arrives. You become dangerous in the quiet hours. Focused, patient, relentless. That's when you start pulling away, not loudly, but with quiet consistency. While others talk about what they'll do, you're doing it. While they wait for the right time, you're making time. While they scroll, you study. While they sleep, you prepare. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present, even when no one else shows up. It's about stacking small wins while others chase big shortcuts. Those small wins, multiplied across days and weeks, create unstoppable momentum. Most people only see the results, the product, the polished version. They don't see the nights of doubt, the dozens of drafts, the early failures, the silent battles. But those who build something real know exactly what went into it. They know the cost. They remember every quiet hour they gave to something they believed in. Every morning they rose before the sun. Every night they stayed after the lights went out. That effort becomes part of who they are. It shapes their identity, their standard, their hunger. The quiet hours are also where belief is built. When you're alone with your thoughts, with your work, with your vision, you're forced to confront what you really want. You're forced to decide if it matters enough to keep going. If it does, those hours become sacred. They're no longer a burden, they're an investment. You're not waiting for opportunity to find you. You're preparing so that when it comes, you're ready. You're not hoping for success. You're building it, one unseen hour at a time.